Okay, so hope everyone is well and tuned in and turned on and unmuted and whatever it takes to create this, participate in this situation with good intention. And we'll begin respects to the shrine. And today we're going to look into some questions and sort of time to practice meditation for a few minutes and then pick up some questions and themes and see where they'll go. Okay. Supatipanno yasam bhagavato savaka sangho Amayam bhagavantam sadhammam sasangham Imehi sagarehi yadaraham aropitehi apepuchayam Sadhuno vande bhagava suchiraparini bhutopi Bhajima janandanagam vamanusam Ime sangharedo kadavana karabode patikanatu Mamaham dikaratam indaya sukhaya Araham samma sambuddho bhagava Buddham bhagavantam apivati Swakato bhagavantam dhammo dhammam namasam Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho sangham namam Damayam buddhasa bhagavato bhupavakanamakaram bhumase Namo dasa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo dasa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo dasa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Let's have a period of silence and taking time to center ourselves. And So today is trying to respond to some questions that have been placed. So we come from where we've been the last minute or so. You've been, I'm pretty much sensing your mental consciousness, contents of your mental consciousness, and maybe also aspects of your bodily consciousness as they arise in your chitta. And it's how your awareness is impacted by mental objects or physical feelings that arise from the body base. And then there was the sound of the bell, so your ear consciousness arose, and the ear consciousness is present, and it's participating with your mental consciousness to understand what I'm saying. And then there'll be a pause. The ear listening consciousness is there, nothing happening within it. Mental consciousness, what's going on, what's it's about. And we can be aware of all these different moderations of consciousness. Now, I'll mention this because trying to explain one of the questions that's brought up about chitta, pure knowing, and how does chitta relate to consciousness, the aggregate of consciousness, and is chitta involved with rebirth or further birth? So, you know, this is words trying to refer to experience, to why are these words there in the first place. These words are there in order to help us move through experience. You know, what is it that moves? What is it the experience happens to? You know, we might be conscious of it, we're not unconscious, but for the sake of differentiation, we call that being conscious, chitta. It's the ability to be receptive, intelligent, that is, you both experience something and know you're experiencing it, you're, aha, that's happening, and there's a quality of being affected by it, pleased, whatever, and then responding to it. That you would say is chitta, that experience. What experience is primarily are what consciousness brings, and consciousness in Buddha Dhamma is referred to as that the consciousness of sound, consciousness of sight, consciousness of thought, consciousness of sensation. There's a six-fold consciousness, which the dominant one is the mental consciousness, which spans or straddles the other consciousnesses and says, oh, well, what's happening with that physical feeling, or that taste is interesting, what's that strange odor, and it's translating all these all these experiences into perceptions. That is, oh, that's pleasant, that's Susan, that's flower, that's tomorrow, I'll do that yesterday, and da, 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 da. So it's mental consciousness is translating physical experiences, or physical phenomena, sense data, into immaterial phenomena. Right? That's the object. So they're internalized. Yeah. So now I can look outside, look at the rain. Raining, it's quite cool, rainy in Britain at this time. Maybe feel, that was the summer gone. Now we're coming into winter. That's mental consciousness. Seeing something, and then that seeing is recognized. That means that, right? That recognition is the actor, the mental consciousness names the experience, it's Dhamma, as something, and then interprets it. This is beginning of coming towards winter, and then maybe a disagreeable feeling. So that which is in some sense outside becomes internalized. This is mental consciousness, and this chitta then is stirred in some way or another. So you see the difference between consciousness, these particular forms that create data. Chitta then receives that and then responds. Mental consciousness also then affects what we're conscious of, where consciousness goes. So, if I was planning to go out and have a picnic today, I had that mental idea in my mind, and I saw the rain, the coolness, then perhaps the response would be unhappy, and I'd linger in a sense of, the mind would be unhappy, and then one might be in a negative state. So then we would create, and the consciousness would be placed in an unfortunate position of irritation. Now, at the same time, if I just sort of closed my eyes and meditated and dropped into some deeper absorptive state, what happened to the rain? Is it there or not there? Consciousness, the chitta steered consciousness to another foundation, right? And if that foundation, where it goes to, is steered with goodwill and clarity, and then the result is the chitta picks up agreeable experiences and uplifting experiences. If its chitta is confused or distorted, then that where it sends consciousness in confused, distorted directions. Associated with greed or hatred or delusion. So this sending, the consciousness being sent off in different directions by the impulses of the chitta, right? Plans, desires, wishes, projections. Then consciousness is established in a plane of desire or frustration or ill will. Or it could be placed in a place of aspiration, kindness, and so forth. It could just turn to deepen, to move out of the sense spheres or these external senses and linger in the quality of forgiveness or loving kindness or absorption. So where consciousness arises depends upon the inclination of the chitta, and that inclination and the aim of the chitta can be trained to attend, to turn towards somewhere where it's going to find its most happy, comfortable, firm, clear, unblemished abiding place. This, we might say, is the very process that is what we call rebirth is about, or Punarbhavika. The word rebirth, again, is one of these rather unfortunate terms because, like quite a few other words in teachings, it's a translation or a mistranslation, actually. The Buddha didn't teach rebirth, he taught birth. And he taught further becoming. So in other words, the process continues in that direction, dependent on the push of the chitta. And the Buddha's understanding was, well, that continues even after this body passes away. You might doubt that, but it's not Clearly, you might not be clear one way or another, but you probably recognize that there have been, where do intentions arise from? Where you don't start out with a blank sheet. You start out with some kind of interest and inclination. So in other words, it was inheritance from the past, from when you woke up in the morning, from what happened to you, your inheritance from past experiences that turn the citta. And so this is what's called further becoming. And it's important to consider that and recognize that, because this is what's called karma. If you generate good karma, then you can arrive, you can testify for yourself, you can arrive in a happier, more pleasant place. And that's the way that one trains oneself. Now, pure knowing is not citta per se. Citta can be extremely deluded, impassioned, good intentioned, relatively clear. And it could have pure knowing if practice is carried through thoroughly. Again, a sense of pure knowing. Again, this is a term that's passed around perhaps by teachers. What does it actually mean? When you try to relate it to the Pali, does it mean sampajanya, clear, which can be translated as clear comprehension? Maybe that's what they're referring to. Or it could be anya, which means realization. That could be what they're referring to. Sense of a state or a knowingness which has no blemish in it. And I would generally say that the reference to that would be this term anya, which is knowingness. And sampajano is that which can be knowing in a particular, around that knowingness as it turns towards a particular phenomenon or theme. So I've seen someone has raised their hand. I wonder what's happening there. Olivia Vass.
Paul. Olivia has a question in follow-up to Chitta. If you would like to allow her to ask the question.
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Ajahn. So I'm sorry I didn't.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Whatever it is.
So my question is really quick. 2 weeks ago when you offered the instructions on how to work with the citta, you talked about working with knowing the I before it turns into an I am or whatever other past or future, receiving, steadying the citta, and letting go. I'm not very clear on the letting go aspect. I must admit that I try to practice with it, and it's a huge conservation of energy, energy that we usually throw out and squander with the wind. So I'd like to develop this practice and understand a little more about letting go or the non-attachment aspect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite an important thing too. I was going to get round to that. Yeah, letting go. Well, it's a graduated process based upon, first of all, the letting go, which enables you leads to not be activated by experience. You can witness it rather than just be, gripped by it. As you can see what's happening, you can get some perspective on feeling sad or excited or worried. There it is. So that's called viveka. And the theme is to disengage from unskillful states. That is, you deliberately unhook your intention from that. You're not going to act upon it. Dispassion, which is the second level or the second penetration of letting go, is a recognition no longer so activated by experience. You first of all, you let go of the activation, you can witness the activation, you're getting upset, and then you begin to see, well, this is just being upset. It's not, you know, it's not even that personal. Everybody gets upset. It's something that will arise and pass, and your sense of making such a drama about it changes, and you become, oh, this is just phenomenon. What's it feel like in my body? This sense of agitation. Oh, right. And then if I relax my body and feel more even-minded, well, and then it ceases. So cessation, and then relinquishment is the relinquishment of identification, which is a very deep topic. So how much you can do letting go is a good question, because part of letting go is letting go of the doer. And that's because this is really the aim, or the final level of the penetration of it, is the very sense of the self who is occupied with this or that, or the self who's going to make themselves into this or that, or the self who should never experience this or that. And who's that? Who is that? What is that? And as you begin to sense that, now, I am what? It's not, there's nothing. There's definitely a, which is an awakened, intelligent receptivity, which I'm using the word I, because it's very subjective, but it doesn't have any attachment to it. It doesn't have, I am good, I am bad, I am going to be this, I will never be this, I shouldn't be that, I am a man, I'm a woman, or whatever. It doesn't have that. It just, and that's just a trick of technique when you're very involved with the experiences, to bring up something that questions the basis of there being somebody there who is involved with it. Because it's on that fundamental basis that the problems begin to mount up. And this is from compulsive engagement. Yeah. So to practice, I mean, all practices eventually will come down to the same point. And the sense of I is just another tip, particularly associated with the doingness of the mind. And for the meditator, the doingness of the mind can be so occupied with trying to achieve certain notional goals of what they feel awakening is about, or dispatch, or clarity, or, you know, they've got this idea what so and so he experienced. I want to be like that, and I should never experience this, and that is endless, actually. Because certainly there are states that the Buddha said it's best to steer away from these. You know, it's best to steer away from these states. And yet fundamentally, there will always be a foundation for states that get stuck, as long as there's the sense of an identity there for them to stick upon. I want to move on, because there were something like 47 questions, and I can only, some of these questions will probably things you asked several times in various ways. I'm not saying that today will give you the answer. I'll give you some answers, and then you'll probably find, oh yeah, and then maybe you come back to it and you have to look at it again. But moving on from there, because citta is also associated with this quality I've called intention. And intention is a very crucial thing, because it's this intention or volition, certain push that arises, that is the link, or that which generates karma, cause and effect, that which launches consciousness, or launches a conscious experience. It launches us into our seeing, which impels the heart into thought, which impels the intelligence into do this, which throws in the citta into, oh, I can't ever be this, you know, moves the chitta towards memory, or well, what about that, into the future, into why is she always doing this to me? You know, what's wrong with her? It's throwing chitta into these particular positions, into this troubled domain of conditioned consciousness. And unfortunately, again, there's a problem with words here, because chitta, in this sense, volition, intention, the Pali word is cetana. There's a good reason to use Pali words, because then you can differentiate. And so chitta and cetana obviously are pretty closely connected. The chitta always has some cetana, unless it's in a state of realization, where the cetana, the impulse to move, to propel something, to acquire something, to hold something, stops. This is nibbana. No cetana there. The rest of the time it's either kind of latent, or inclining, holding, resisting, forming something. And so this is, we might say, this is very primary to chitta. And these cetanas are not, the English word intention fails in this respect. In the intention in English generally means something that's more clearly considered. I really intend to, go to Berlin next week. That's what which is not what cetana means. And so these are, we might see these kinds of intentions are there's certainly an impulse there, but broadly speaking, this is the area that the Buddha talked about as, to be reviewed under the, in terms of the, what's called sammasankappa, full or right or fitting aspiration or aim or intent or resolve or attitude. So this is why we have to use Pali, because even though the Pali don't understand it, at least you know it's not quite the same as cetana. Cetana is just like the electricity that runs into the mind. But sankappa is something that's actually steering that electricity, channeling it. Cetana is like the water that gushes, and sankappa is the channel that turns that one way or another, right? And we do have some say over that. We can have, we don't. So and here the three sankappas, or the foundational sankappas, is to incline away from hatred, malice, ill will, away from sensuality, not to be seeking gratification in the sense world, and away from cruelty or callousness, which means a certain sense of indifference, a lack of empathy, where we don't care anymore. So what? So what about you? So what about me? So what about her? So what about other things? It's a callous, insensitive state. And you're turning away from those towards sankappas, attitudes, aspirations, aims that are imbued with goodwill, forgiveness, loving kindness, imbued with compassion. Everything is of some, everything I'm aware of does affect me. I should, callousness is not appropriate. Whether I can do anything about it is another matter, but at least just have a sense of being what the Buddha called anukampa. Anukampa means one is sensitively empathic or empathetic. You maybe feel regret over the loss of animal life or tragic social circumstances. You're not, oh well, that's the way it goes. You're not indifferent to it. So you don't lose your sensitivity. You don't become thick-skinned and callous and indifferent. And you don't allow your will to take over your mind, desire for revenge, blaming people, blaming yourself, feeling bad about yourself, hating yourself, not loving yourself, and actually being negligent towards your own heart. And this is to be turned away from. Gratification through the senses is when we seek to be fulfilled or satisfied through sight, sound, or thought, touch, and so forth. Doesn't mean we don't notice these phenomena, thought, sounds, and so forth, and the heart could be enriched by a response towards those phenomena, but the fundamental response we wish to cultivate is of goodwill and sensitivity, compassion and concern. And that's the fundamental basis of response. Now, exactly what you do from that, because that level of chitta is very basic. Those are the foundations, and then what you can actually do in any situation depends on what the situation or the field allows. Even the Buddha could not make the country he was living in a peaceful place. He could not make, he could not stop violence in the very place he was living. He could not create a just society, and so on and so on and so on. But it didn't mean he didn't stop doing good and doing what he could to bring around people's individual welfare and point to the welfare of the society and the environment and the cosmos in general. And say this is extremely significant, because when we tune our sankappa and our chittas correctly, this is what brings the entire cosmos into balance. Yeah, and the idea of the cosmos I use the word cosmos rather than world, because I'm not talking about a planet. I'm talking about the cosmos, which means in the Vedic Indian system, the spheres of gods, phenomena that we cannot see, the celestial world, the hell realms, we might say, the immaterial cosmos, and the cosmos of nature, supernature, nature, animals, plants, so forth, and human beings, and also our own inner world. So all these interact. If our own inner world is distorted, then for sure that's going to radiate out through the entire cosmos. And there's a point where he says, if people are immoral, overwhelmed with passions and craving, then what happens is the spirits are not happy, and the climate goes strange, and things go out of season, and the wind doesn't blow properly, and the rain, and then there's a whole environmental breakdown. And you say, well, that's kind of interesting. And then you look around and think, well, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. You got it right. And it's not through some unfathomable process. And we might say, well, it's because of this bad person, this bad leader. But how did he get to be a leader? Because, the society and the world system allowed it to happen. The powers that be, people voted or approved of, or an individual person can't do it on their own. They have to convince others. So somehow this person was able to gain enough support to effect ruinous circumstances. So he says, so in a way, we keep our own heart and mind steady, we don't support that. And if each individual does that, then the cosmos comes into order. And even to the point at which even if only you do that, then your aspect of the cosmos comes into order. Yeah? Because the cosmos is the experienceable domain of what we, our beyond our rational perspectives. Yeah? And so clearly the Buddha was able to live an equanimous and happy life in a world that was pretty brutal and violent, because he had his own, his perspectives were that way. So Sankappa is very significant, because this is where we steer the Chaitana, the impulse. And the third way in which we can review this topic is called Chanda, motivation or desire. And naturally desire can get a bad press, because people normally talk about desire being tanha. But tanha is craving, which is a certain pathological, unquenchable thirst. I must have, I must have, I must have, I must have, I need to fill up. I need to this, I need to be this, I want to be this, I want to make that, this is kind of, and whatever you do, it doesn't get fulfilled. And Chanda is a skillful desire, in that it's actually, I want to focus clearly on that and do something with that. I'm going to work with that. When I say do, I mean cultivate, I mean release, I mean let go, I mean investigate, I mean, do your practice around that particular experience. That's Chanda. And this is a basis for one of the iddhipatas, one of the bases of success. You have to have Chanda, motivation. You have to light the fire. You have to get the spark going and fan it to be motivated. So then one is motivated towards skillful states. And you're motivated towards skillful states. Where are you going to find those skillful states? Well, you started tuning your mind to, is there ill will in my mind? Well, let's look at that. Is there sense desire in my mind? Craving and thirst and attachment. Let's have a review that one. Where's that going? And my sense of indifference. And my mind despondent and hopeless. Let's look at that. Let's get to work on that. Now, what you work on is, of course, all these objects, these phenomena, these practices, kamatanas, dispassion, loving kindness, and all the formulations of Dhamma practice is what we get motivated to. And the fundamental motivation has to be towards skillful becoming. And skillful becoming, skillful ponobhavika, skillful furtherance of citta, if it's skillful and it's persevered with clarity, leads to relinquishment of that passion, that desire, that fear, that ill will, that holding on, that attachment, that sense of self, that leads to nibbana. So they're not separate paths. It's not like you do good karma or you could get to nibbana. The good karma leads to nibbana if you practice with it. And the practice of is variously termed kammatthana. And to tune into another topic that's brought up, it's where the Buddha says several times to the monks, look, here are roots of trees, here are lonely places. All that I've taught, a teacher can teach, I've taught you out of compassion. Meditate, bhikkhus. That's what it says in the English. You look in the Pali and it says jayati bhikkhave. Jayati means jhana. So what does that mean? Cultivate jhana? It doesn't say cultivate jhana, it says jhana. Now that's translated here as meditate. You see other terms where that word is used, it's called absorption. Again, here we've got a translation issue, because these terms to us can mean rather different things. Jhana is a sort of special state that you arrive at. If you're a sotapanna and you need to have this jhana, sotapanna, that's a specific instance of jhana. But you notice also the Buddha says if you cultivate the mind of goodwill for the length of time it takes to snap your fingers, then you have developed jhana. Right? It's interesting, isn't it? Do you think you could do that for just that long? No, it doesn't say that you've completed it, but you've got a handle on it. You've touched it. You touched the principle of, what is that principle? The principle fundamentally, engage with your mind. Engage with your mind at the roots of your mind. Don't engage with your mind in terms of, well, she does this and he doesn't do that. What am I going to do about this? And what am I going to do about that? Then you're engaging with worry, right? Or he always treats me like an idiot. Then you're engaging with resentment. You want to engage with those, at least name what they are. Okay, here is resentment, here is fear, here is intimidation. Right, let's engage with that. What does that feel like in the citta? This engaging means you get to terms with it and you begin to deconstruct the complexities of it all. This deconstructing process goes along with what jhana is about. It's about a deconstruction of the multifaceted way in which phenomena manifest, through consciousness, mind consciousness. Got him, her, my brother, my sister, my dead father, my grandfather, state of the world, my pet dog, what I'm going to do tomorrow, who's winning the election, who's losing the election. It's stuff, right? Massive media saturation, massive blizzard of phenomena. Yeah, it's true in some respect, but you can't, you just feel overwhelmed with it. So let's look at what you can deal with, which is the roots of your mind feeling overwhelmed, oppressed. Okay, well, not okay, but now you're naming it. Now you engage with that. You engage with that, you say, well, let's let go of the name of the person and the time and place and get down to the experience of feeling oppressed. What's that like? Yeah. There's a sense of, let's be a little more tender-hearted towards that. Less dismissive, kindly, sustaining, gentle, embody, breathe through it. Now you're doing jhana. Yeah. And if that is cultivated properly, then what arises, the mind becomes firm and steady. And this steadiness and firmness of the mind, samadhi. And then you can very well, there are certain benchmarks. And you say, when you really, establish this fully, the hindrances of ill will, doubt, confusion are gone. And this is the first benchmark called jhana. It's really strong for you. It's really, you've established something that can then stand for you. You can recognize the characteristics of that. Oh, here the mind is steady, it feels happy, it feels open, and certainly there can be sustained inquiry into that. Not certainly a lot of thought, but you can navigate through that. It's called the first jhana. So someone's asking you, how much do you need for street? Do you need jhana for stream entry? It depends what you mean by the word jhana, of course. But if you look through the texts, you're going to see that this term is referred to frequently, and certainly these stream entries and so forth. Particularly in awakening, then these are right there. Now, there's certain kinds of avenues that stream enters favor or find inclined for different people have different dispositions. So you have the faith disposition, the sati vihara, someone who approaches through faith, devotion. And you can absorb into that. You can become one who has a very strong basis for that. And so this is certainly someone who has a very unshakable foundation whereby their mind can immediately return, can get to that pretty steadily and be sustained and repel the hindrances through that, well, they've entered the stream. You know, they've entered the stream of Dhamma. They're not thrown around in the world because they have an unshakable basis in faith or confidence in Triple Gem, in the fact of awakening, the practice of awakening, and then being, you know, connected, fully connected and committed to that. So it's streaming through faith. Another one's called the body witness. Body witness is someone who experiences in their own body, meditation again, a sense of firmness, happiness, and they can keep returning to that. So they're sick or troubled or people insult them, they can return to that and feel that sense of a firm foundation. Another one, and that's something they know it's there, and they know they can do it, and they do it on a regular basis. Another one is called the ditthi, the one who arrives there through view, through wisdom, through kind of reviewing process and a sense of understanding Dhamma. So these are different ways in which the stream entry can be configured. If you look in the Kitagiri Sutta, in the Majjhima Nikaya, Kitagiri Sutta, the Buddha refers to these different dispositions. The language is a little bit difficult as usual, but they're all there. And it says there's quite a few ways in which people enter this path. But the stream entry, and the stream entry, again, it's not so much a person as a chitta, right? And it says, you know, the chitta can still be confused, get caught up with stuff, but it's sort of, oh, wait a minute, and returns to those realizations. It's definitely got a realization basis that gives it a way of being firm and not being overwhelmed by hindrances and obstructions and what the world is doing. Yeah, and how much you need? You need as much as it takes to do that. So, you know, rather than have I got First John or Second John or this or that, or it says this in the book and I don't know about that. And just, you know, can you be firm, clear, and be honest? You know, and not, and so you really have a refuge, because that's what the stream is. It's an unbroken refuge, and you know, that's. If that's there, you are really in something that's, your life is worthwhile. You're not just getting by. Your life is worthwhile. It says, and the Buddha says, if this is established, you've cleared a mountain of dirt, and all that's left is the dirt under your fingernails. Takes some getting out though, but but you've certainly, because you have realized yourself, the mind does not have to be what the world does to it. But naturally, intention, attitude, chanda, motivation, practice, all necessary. So what happens if someone says, you know, my practice got stuck, I feel despondent, you know, with people I don't really get inspired by. Yeah, other people. And so those are always a big topic in various questions, is those other people. There's lots of them, aren't there? And they're all designed to annoy me or disappoint me, or, you know, or I feel obliged and weighed down by, you know, by the partner who I no longer feel affection for, or the parent who's oppressing me, or the company who seems very worldly, not very, you know, inspiring. Yeah, you get used to it. It's other people are practice. Yeah, And it's great if you remember Kalyanamita is a treasure. If you have people who inspire you, you should not think that lightly of that. You should not think lightly of that at all, because it's not supposed to just be some sort of isolated experience, but something whereby you're confirmed by the goodness that you see around you, and not disappointed by the foolishness or the experience you witness around you. So what happens when you living with others, and naturally most all others are not arahants, most of them are extreme entras. What do you do about that? Well, what is it? Cultivate goodwill. And the question of metta, metta is a domain, it's a field, so it includes yourself. It's said to be cultivated here, there, everywhere, all round. It's an all-round cultivation. It's not, well, I'll give her some metta, then she'll be more pleasant towards me, and I'll give him some metta, and then maybe I've done what I can for him. But it's also, metta means we're living in a domain whereby we don't allow frustration, ill will, sadness to take over the heart. You have to shift what you point towards in that basis. And naturally, goodwill towards others, very crucial, but that can't happen unless your own citta is established in goodwill, which means, first of all, it's goodwill towards your own heart is the foundation. Otherwise, what are you doing? If you have no goodwill towards your own heart, how can you have, where are you getting the goodwill from to send it to other people? There's none in here. How can you send that to somebody else? Right? So get it in here, first of all, before you start thinking you can send it elsewhere. And this probably means, letting go of the irritation and the frustration that people can bring up. Your mind feels oppressed or narrow, or breathing in, breathing out, feeling oppressed, feeling irritated. Why does he always have to do that? I've told him 50 times, he's still doing that. He annoys me. I've been so long, I'm fed up, I'm irritated. Let's get some kindness around that. What's a kindly thing to do? Well, why don't I just feel that in my body? Take time, let go of the idea of the person and deal with the roots of your own mind. And this may, you start with that. Then you can, from that places, you can look at people with a mind of some dispassion. Because if I'm feeling good, I don't really need other people to be so good to me. If I'm feeling good in myself, if I'm strong and firm in myself, I don't really have to have everybody agree with me. It doesn't matter, because I've got this, I'm this. And that's your ultimate refuge. From that place, then you're much more able to be, well, that's the way it is, and she's obviously having a bad day, and she's stuck in that. And equanimity. Remember these Brahmavihara, measureless states, the four of them. Goodwill, kindness, which is basically a feeding experience. So you feed your own heart. And naturally, you can feed up what you see around you. So it naturally radiates. If your heart is well fed, its nature is to radiate its warmth. That's what hearts do. You don't have to push them. They're naturally, they're not we're not talking about the skin bag, the organ of the heart, but I might say the heart, citta in consciousness, that has a radiant quality to it, just like fire or like light. You can't say don't radiate, it does. So it's bound to radiate, and you can trust that. And so those who can pick it up will pick it up. and it can inform your speech and how you think and what you expect. And naturally, it means you become perhaps more compassionate towards other people's shortcomings. Yeah, I mean, she's in a difficult state, and or more equanimous. Looks like this one's not going very far. This particular relationship, that's as much as you can get out of it. I'm open to change, but I'm not demanding it. So, you know, rocked around, you've got somebody who's stuck in a habit, or it's going to be with people, long-term people, you know, difficult parent. You know, she's been like that for 40 years. She sees you as her little something or other who she's going to tell you what to do all the time. This is going to go on for a while, probably. You just have to, well, that's her thing, and not get to don't participate in it. And one is able to do that without being rude, but just be clear and keep your heart steady. Well, we seem to have moved along a bit. Oh yeah, someone's talking about loss of motivation for practice. Well, motivation, they say, well, I can't, because I've been aware of how things are impermanent and changeable. You know, I can't see much point in just putting a lot of effort into a career if everything is all just impermanent and changeable and not self. And even my sense of relationships isn't, I don't feel that interested in having relationships with people. So, you know, where do I get my motivation from? What am I going to do in my life? Well, it could be time to go forth. Yeah, either, you know, become a nun or a monk is the obvious classical example, or do live like that and put your motivation into the roots of your mind. No one can really say why that happens. Some people are not for others. That's the nature of karma. But at the same time, this sense of loss of motivation for career relationships is because we so often, perhaps, I don't want to say I know exactly what you're talking about, but think of career as being get a job, work for a living, become a manager, Well, yeah, could be that. But also you could have a career as someone, I am someone who generates loving kindness. I don't get paid for it, but that's my career. Sometimes when I go through borders and customs, they ask me what I've come here to do. And I say, well, I just come here to spread a little bit of kindness around. That's my job. Or I've come to create some space. I'm a spaciousness agent. I create some space for people. That's my job, that's my career. I don't get paid for it, but I do in a way. You know, I get the gratitude that feeds me. I get friendship that feeds me, and people express their gratitude for offering requisites, and that keeps me going. So that's my livelihood. I don't go out there selling things, but that's what happens. I'm in a relational context. So here, no relationship. I'm in relationship with everything. Well, some kind of relationship. I mean, I've got a, you know, bonded partner as such, like a one-off person. I think this is what do I say? It's often an accepted norm. That's what we should have or should be, or way we should live. And I think it's up for negotiation. I don't think you have to. It may be that way, but it seems rather putting all your eggs in one basket. Because you know they can change, and you get either or the relationship changes. You no longer feel so inspired, or they die. But it doesn't mean you can't be in relationship. It's just that there's more space in it. You know, it says she's here. He's there, you know, we share, we exchange, and that seems very valuable to me. But I don't want a special one-off that I'm, you know, embedded with. So you need to sort of shift, because without that, without a sense of I belong here. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm not just looking through a glass at something that's going on I'm completely different to. I do belong, or I'm involved with, I'm connected to this, what's happening, yeah, to people. I have a certain sense of purpose in my life. That's important. My purpose isn't to become a director or a manager. My purpose is to see if I can sustain Dhamma and offer service. Offer service. Yeah. And this is one of the fundamental themes for what's called proper social cohesion. These are generosity, dana, warm-hearted speech, piyavaja, attacharya, service, and samanatata, even-mindedness, which means you offer those qualities evenly to yourself, to others, to those you don't feel not close to those you are close to. You offer it evenly. You spread out your act of kindness, generosity, kindly speech, kindly thought. Yeah. And that's you serve. And then you're motivated to serve. And the motivation to serve isn't necessarily to get things done, but to pick up specific activities of generosity and goodwill, not just as a theory, but I will do this piece of work, yeah, and carry it through the struggle and the difficulty and the impatience, and it will purify my mind. You know, because sometimes meditators, we can get like, I don't want to, you know, I'm not attached to anything. I don't want to get involved with anything, too attached. And that's, no, then you're attached too much to yourself, you know, to your own privacy. And that's not, Buddha was certainly engaged. He was the first engaged Buddhist, deeply engaged. He didn't need to be. He'd done his own work, but he served till his dying breath. Phenomenal amount of service. And there's clearly a motivation, not for personal gain, but for the welfare of others. And if we practice, as you know, even amongst life, and doing kind of rather dreary things sometimes out, just working, throwing logs around, or a business meeting, and it can feel like, oh, the point of this. No, see it in the light of that which will sustain the community, that which will keep this community intact, that which will bring benefit into the world. I will do that, and I will recognize my impatience, my irritation, my frustration with other people, and I'll clear those. Then I've got a definite, you know, practice in the world that I use as a purifier. Right? Definitely something you put your nose to the grindstone, and till you finally begin to purify the heart through engagement, through skillful engagement, and looking for motivation for that. And it can be 1,000 things, you know, looking after somebody else's dog, you know, because anything you commit to, you're going to find times when you don't want to do it anymore. You'll find times when it becomes disappointing. You find times when you feel it boring. You think, what's the point of this? And those are your places you've got to work through. Yeah. It's not a place to say, oh, I can't do this anymore. We all get to these places when I can't do it anymore. And those are the important places to get to, because when I can't do it anymore, then my citta has to rise up beyond my self view, say, well, stay with it. stay with it and gradually discard that sense of frail-heartedness or disappointment, or I want people to like this. And then you purify, and the heart becomes great through that. So motivation. I'll deal with a couple more questions. I mean, you know, I'm happy to keep going. I don't want to use up all your time, but obviously you can leave when you want. Where were we? Oh, rites and rituals. This term, attachment to rites and rituals, sila pata paramasa, a fetter, something that has to be overcome, and is overcome through stream entry, and rites and rituals, sila pata paramasa. What does this mean? Because they're rather archaic terms. They are archaic, and again, as I've probably said 5 times already, this is a translation issue. And I would say, think of it colloquially, running on automatic. Following conventional structures blindly. It doesn't mean paying homage to Vishnu, yeah, or anything like this. So, because this is not about religion, this is about people's lives. And everybody's life, a socialized human being, are always structures that we follow. We follow them so constantly, we don't even realize that they are structures, like days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's become established as 7 days in a week, not 6. Why? What's different between Monday and Tuesday and Saturday and Sunday? It's just, where did that come from? I don't know. The 7-day week. Yeah. The 52-week year. Well, of course, in the lunar cycle, you don't have 7-day weeks. You have 8 days, 8s and 6s, and they vary. Some weeks are 6, some weeks are 8. But it's just the convention. We take that for granted, that structure. Getting a job, having a job. So I've been through school, university, got my da-da-da-da, it's time to go to work, get a job. I work 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and then that's a structure. That's a conventional structure. And around that conventional structure, my identity is formed. I am a plumber. I am a computer programmer. I am a secretary. That's who I am. That's who I am. And then I get all the kind of praise and blame and problems associated with being that person who is not a very good manager, who is a secretary having to do too much work. And you think, wait a minute, I'm not a secretary. That's just the conventional. These conventional structures become our identities. And it gets to the point when, you know, in small respects, this is Monday, I have to have this done. Every Monday I do this. I always do the house cleaning Monday at 9 o'clock. If I don't do it at 9 o'clock, I feel confused. You know, 6 o'clock is dinner, 7 o'clock is too late. I feel confused. So we get attached to conventional structures. So I call them systems and customs. Anything you do systematically can be a fetter. And why I say that, I emphasize can be, is because we all operate. We have to operate according to systems and structures, customs and systems, in order to create a kind of social congruence. You know, we all have to agree it's Tuesday. Not, well, I don't think it's Tuesday, I think it's Thursday. We have to say Tuesday is Tuesday. It's only a convention, but there it is. Time is a convention. We have to use them to create a congruence of human activity. But you do realize a lot of that structure is there not for enlightenment, but to get you to work, to get you to pay your taxes, to get you to, you know, join the army, to get you to whatever it is, you know, to be a functioning member of a society, and you not to question where it's going, but just to get on board with that. You realize, where are they going? you look at where the societies are going, they're not going to enlightenment. They're going to what the leaders, or where the economy goes. So you think, well, okay, that's where it's a working day week, the 8-hour working day or whatever it is. Even your sleep rhythms have been fashioned by work. You work all day and you sleep all night. That was never in pre-mechanistic societies. That's not a natural rhythm. Pre-mechanistic or non-mechanistic societies, you sleep when you're tired and you work when you're not tired, when you want to. There's no hours to it. You do stuff when you need to, when you've got the energy. When you don't have the energy, you take a break, and that can be any time. So these are conventional structures. We operate through them, but we have to keep an eye on them. Naturally, as a Buddhist monk, I am very much structured into rules and procedures and protocols. And there's certainly a lot of using those to maintain integrity, clarity, purpose, mindfulness. Because this system does not go to worldly gains at all. It's like worldly gains may accrue, but that's not its aim. Its aim is to use conventional structures to purify the mind from negligence, heedlessness, selfishness, corruption. And then you use them skillfully. But if you get attached to it, then I am a Buddhist monk, I am this, that, and the other, I am better, I am this, I'm not as good as she is, we're the best thing in the world, then stress occurs. Other people should be doing this, stress occurs. You attach a self to it. And that's really what the stream enterers let go of. They let go of these three fetters. Personality view, they tend to assume they are a person who lives inside a body. Attachment to systems and structures, and doubt. They don't really know deeply. Haven't really penetrated Dhamma. And the average person finds themselves, or the untrained mind will tend to hold system structures very tightly because it gives them a sense of something firm. They want to know where they are, what to do, how to do it right, what time of day it is, and so forth. What's the right system to do it? Because they don't have anything firmer to rely upon. So people get obsessed with their customs, local customs, family customs, and then everything else is wrong. If they can't do it that way, they feel confused. So stream enterer is very flexible and adaptable, and uses systems and customs in accordance with what's purposeful, graceful, furthering, and leads away from self. So I was asking to change the topic a little. Well, there's a few others. Someone's confused, not certain about energies, body energies, and sensations, and what's an energy flow. An energy flow is when the energies, the body energies or the mental energies, come into harmony. So we recognize sensations are only rarely in harmony. It means in terms of the tactile consciousness, generally some parts of your body are not feeling so comfortable and other parts are, and you tend to focus on the comfortable parts and not focus on the uncomfortable parts. The uncomfortable parts become very uncomfortable and you get stuck in those, or you move around and fidget like I do. Energies are somewhat different. Energies are associated with the overall, you might say, nervous system, or autonomous nervous system, how harmonious your body feels. And this also can be discordant because the body, at this level, the bodily energies are connected to the qualities of citta. So if citta is frightened, the body energies tighten up. If citta is malicious, the body energies seize up, become hard. If the citta is saddened, overwhelmed with sadness, it becomes shapeless, it loses orientation, it gets chaotic. We feel that sense of droopy sadness, or we feel tight, indignant, or we feel contracted and anxious. So these are residual states that can be present. And in your practicing, the idea is to focus on the body in terms of its energies. And you can use simple references. References are the elements: earth, fire, air and water. Earth, how firm it is. Whether the firmness of the body feels too hard and rigid, so you feel stiff, you know this is not skillful. But if your firmness is good, but rigidity isn't. So these energies need to be moderated. Feeling warm is good, but feeling hot and passionate, no, not right. Feeling cold and stagnant, not right. Fire energy needs to be balanced. Air energy means a sense of activity. Feeling overactive, you get very restless and stirred up. But at the same time, you don't want to be torpid and dull. And water energy is a sense of cohesion, that which encompasses things. But we do need to have boundaries. Now, how do these things get moderated? They get moderated. One primary method of moderating is called anapanasati. Anapanasati is to do with moving the life force, the prana, through the entire body. And you move prana, life force, through the body. And as you sense it, you can sense where it's getting stuck. There's areas where you begin to develop a mind that knows about releasing and opening. When it feels too intense, you develop a mind, an attitude that knows about cooling and stepping back and shifting from a very intense area, just widening your attention to include less intense areas of your body. You feel very intense in your throat. You might say, well, what's happening in my chest, in my hip, in my leg, in my foot? You widen. And that allows the energy to drain and equalize. So you can do this just through the mind, but more accurately, it's the mind that accompanies breathing, or prana. So this other topic of anapanasati, of mindfulness of the prana. It's a large topic, but it refers to, as you know, panatipata is killing breathing creatures. It's taking their life away. So with anapana, we're not particularly talking about watching a breath, but being mindful of the process of the breathing life force as it moves through our body and how our mind contacts it. Right? How do you know you're breathing? Without any particular focus, without doing anything more, focusing any more intensely than just say, do you know you're breathing? Are you sure? Can you feel it? Don't do anything more intense than that. Or you notice there's a difference between breathing out and breathing in. It may be just the swelling of your belly. It could be the tightening of your clothes, right? You notice how rhythmic it is. It's always that same rhythm, right? Very distinctive. Breathing out as a rhythm, breathing in. And they're quite distinctive, breathing out and breathing in. Breathing in tends to brighten, breathing out tends to cool. Breathing in tends to slightly intensify, and breathing out tends to dissipate and suffuse. So this is the life force. I find this, I encourage this personally, over focusing on a particular point in your body, because so often when you focus on a particular point in your body, you narrow your focus right down and your mind starts to get intense. And that mental intensity affects the energy. And that energy affects your breathing. And the breathing then gets intense. And that affects your energy. And your mind gets intense. And then things start to go unbalanced. Or you create criteria, like I have to count every breath to get it right. And that's that attitude, get it right, is not a helpful attitude to have. Because again, it sets up a particular mental act of criticism. When you want to get things right, and you're not aware of that disposition, you set up the basis for failure. And when you set up the basis for failure to a mind that wants to get it right, you set up the foundation for self-criticism. And you set up the failure of an identification with that. And what's happening is you've developed ill will and you drip it into your body and mind. So stop doing that. And the Buddha just asks us, can you be aware of breathing in and breathing out? Can you be that simple? Can you try again just to relax and be breathing in and breathing out? Feel it as it is. And trust it, that the life force, which never leaves you until you die, you're always breathing in and out. If there's no pressure and no mental tension and confusion around that, it feeds the mind. And Chitta can rest upon it because this is free. You don't have to make an effort to breathe in and out. It does it. It's free, it's voluntary, it's rather pleasant. It's refreshing. Can I be that simple to allow something to happen to me? And to be mindful to the extent to which I'd say, put aside other things and stay with this. No, not right now. This, even though it's not fantastic. And then this encourages the mind and the life force to strengthen in that particular experience. And gradually, and the Buddha says, then you experience it sensitive to your entire body. This means you work through these constricted areas where the body energy is dull or flat, these areas where it's very intense and painful, and you begin to breathe through all that with this disposition of goodwill. Patience, simplicity. And you work through that. And then he says your entire body is drenched, saturated with rapture, joy, and comfort. That's energy. That's not sensation. And that's not a small thing, because if that occurs, when that occurs, the hindrance of sensuality has no place to hold on because you're already satisfied. Hindrance of ill will has no place to hold on because there's nothing to be averse to. Hindrance of dullness, you're radiant. You feel this joyful radiance. Hindrance of restlessness, you're comfortable. Sukha, at ease. Hindrance of doubt, speculation, hesitancy. No, there's nothing to have to figure out. You're confident. This is comfortable. The mind is not looking for alternatives, not looking for conclusions, not looking for what does this mean? Am I this or am I that? You've got something you can recognize. It's a nimitta, which means it's a recognizable characteristic. And this is your body energy is satisfied. When your body energy is satisfied, your mind is satisfied. And then it's said, for one whose body is satisfied, their mind is happy. One whose mind is happy, their mind is concentrated. It's samadhyati. And again, this term needs to be reviewed because people, the English word concentration generally involves this. It's something we do, but in Buddha suttas, it's something that happens. It arrives through dispelling negative forces. It's more like your mind is consolidated, composed, collected in itself. It's not concentrated on a particular phenomenon. It's collected and settled and firm in itself. So the Buddha never says concentrate on breathing. He says be mindful of it. Mindfulness is a form of, you could call it a form of concentration, just this. But it's very much a negotiating concentration. That is, not that, but this. No, this. No, just that. No, not that. No, this. So then you're definitely on topic. Keeps you on topic, but it's not rigid. And the result of that is in mind, you're settled. That's samadhi. The energies are settled. And you can't settle energy through an act of will, because that act of will is an energy. And that if you're running force into an energetic system, you can grip it into some state, but it's not settled. It's not settled in itself. It's being held together. Yeah. So it doesn't happen through an act of will. It acts through certainly a motivation, the motivation to sensitively come to terms with, meet difficulties, practice with them, jhana, jayati, bhikkhus. Meditate, don't waste your time, deal with these difficulties, dispel them, and the result will be you will be settled, comfortable in yourself. And that's the basis for pleasant abiding in the here and now. Right? It says if you don't get any further than that, that's a pleasant abiding in the here and now. There's also a basis whereby one can witness and put aside this view, that attitude. So it's a basis for liberation. You can review phenomena as they arise within that crucible of practice. The deeper it goes, the more fundamental, the more in-depth the review gets. So, a sketch of what Anapana is about, what jhana is about, what samadhi is about, what energy is about, a thumbnail sketch. And it's a thumbnail impromptu sketch, so naturally it's not perfected, classical, complete piece, but you know, we'll probably be talking about this for the next 10 years or so. So, something to get back to from time to time. Let's see, I think, a couple more. Well, okay. Someone talks about prayer and shamanical practices. This means, I guess I would say what this is referring to is some reference to power, energy, intelligence beyond, you know, the sensory, beyond what we see, hear, or touch. So we talk about deities and so forth, and aspirations, you know, to may the universe hear me, or may there something or the other. That kind of movement. Is this useful? I think it has its uses. We get very much embedded in this level of reality as if this is it. You know, this strange world of buildings and cars and trees and people and rain and so forth. That's it. That's the only place it exists. And in Buddhist cosmos, certainly not the case. It's just one stratum, and you've got these other layers. You know, you can move through celestial realms, and you know how when you pray to them for help. You know, well. I think it can be useful to the humility of it. You know, It's not necessarily some angels who would leap down from the sky and help you out, but just that sense of, to direct beyond your worldview, to consider beyond your worldview, to aim beyond your worldview, to aim beyond your mental conditioning, something transcendent. Say, well, just even an opening to it is, I think, useful. And of course, this is the basis of what we call religion. And some of these religions are shamanical, they call them shamanical. But all religion is shamanical. You have the priest or the shaman or the sorcerer or the wizard. And of course, the word shamana comes from the word samana. So I'm a shamana. Samana, they got the word shaman or shaman comes from the Pali word samana, or the Sanskrit word shramana. Shramana, shamana, shaman. So in other words, someone who mediates to the transcendent spiritual cosmos as a medium. And yeah, that's the case. Not everyone, but you do meet some Buddhist monks who definitely seem to have access with worlds and levels beyond this one, and can mediate in them. And that's forest ajahns, some of these Krupa ajahns have that capacity. So yeah, we the humility of not just seeing the secular materialist world as the only reality there is. Probably this leads on to the last question. I've gone. It's about life termination and resuscitation. Certainly having the perspective that this particular constructed world that we see around us with a physical form, with flesh and sights and sounds, that's not the one and only. So it does help us to understand death in a much more broader and perhaps more useful perspective. What we call death is just the movement from this level, from this experience, from this construction. And it doesn't mean nothing. Now, the secular materialist dreads death or denies it or fends it off because there's nothing else, or they may even wish it. Let me get out of here. I'm fed up. I've had enough. I want to switch off. Let me terminate. Then I'll be out. I know you won't. It doesn't happen like that. The only way out is Nibbana. So once you put aside these views, you say, well, there will be Purnobhavika, further becoming in another plane of existence. What happens when this one becomes extremely difficult? Yeah, and so the very crude advice is you don't recommend people to take their own lives as such. So you're not saying, well, you're 85 years old, and what point is being alive? No more fun for you. Why don't you just kill yourself? That's certainly not something you recommend. Termination, like the person is comatose, maybe why keep them going? Difficult, very difficult decision, very difficult thing to do, to come to terms with. As practitioners, it's probably good to create a living will. To say, look, in this condition, don't bother to keep me going. Doesn't mean kill me. It means when this system can only be kept in this level of reality, in this level of experience, this system can only be kept in this reality through all kinds of artificial means. Don't bother. Don't bother. That certainly, from a Buddhist perspective, entirely doable. I think probably it becomes more important because now, of course, we can keep these things technically in this conditioned reality, this particular conditioned reality, all kinds of artificial means were not available at the time of the Buddha. So now we have greater choice. Probably up for us to make the choice, you know. So recently, talking to someone who had one of these fatal disease, and he just said, okay, at a certain point, you know, he's being fed, couldn't speak, being fed liquid and food. He said, just take those out. That's enough. And in 5 or 6 days, dead. Very clear and conscious and focused. And I saw him a few days before he passed away, very intent on Dhamma. And yeah, well, it's an example to consider. Whether more difficult is, okay, you know, somebody mentioned, you know, some relative has dementia, crazy. What's the point of keeping him going? I wouldn't necessarily judge. And, one of our disciples, she went into dementia. She'd been a very graduate from Cambridge University, very intelligent woman, specialized in Buddha Dhamma, very intelligent woman. And then after about, you know, late 70s, I think, then her mind or brain began to stop functioning. And it's just something that tends to happen as we get older. First of all, our body's not so strong, then our brains begin to become less agile, and the ability to process data. So she got to a point where she could no longer even put a sentence together. And she'd been a literature specialist. She couldn't even get one sentence. So she couldn't even create coherent words. She just talked garbled noise. And but whenever we went to see her, she would just, and the noise, the sounds she made were kind of happy, joyful sounds. So her citta was certainly there, and it was happy and joyful. Right? Just because the condition of verbal structuring ceases, it doesn't mean, you know, the person's not there or not available. Now, a person may be experiencing serious stress in their dementia. And I don't think it's one should say, well, you know, terminate. You know, it's not, it's one's own sense of pain and agitation and the difficulties that person's creating, and your sense of concern for them. But remember, they are not the body, they are not the thinking mind. There will be another becoming for this person. Maybe there's things they're working out in there at some level or another. But clearly these are not topics one can just resolve on an online impersonal session. But I would suggest you think carefully about what I've touched into. There are fortunate births, fortunate future states, and this birth is considered a very good opportunity to determine the future becoming of the citta, and to also to terminate what should be terminated, which is clinging, identification with this suffering, stress, ill will, callousness. That's what needs to be terminated. And the rest of it, we have to maintain respectful awareness of and approach with a mind that's balanced, understands, is patient and equanimous. So, thank you very much for your questions. I find it stimulating and encouraging to be an intelligent conversation, even though it's barely a conversation, but some kind of form of, I think it's very encouraging, and so I'm appreciative. For me, this is food. food for the heart. And the fact that 100, 200 of you have created some time to engage in this is also tremendously encouraging. This is what we can do. This now the end of our rains retreat. So for those of you who made a determination for your rains retreat and you managed to learn from it, hopefully sustain it, but sometimes please learn from the mistakes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well done. Congratulations. This is how we progress through our practice. And I'm going to take a few weeks break. Business is coming up and the things to do in the monastery, and take some time off, and I hope to be back to be with you at a future occasion. So thank you very much and be well.
Dhamma sadhu karanda Dhamma se sadhu 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 anumodani.
Okay. Let's offer our respects to the Buddha, who is the great founder and sustainer, and found the path, presented the path, whose footsteps we follow as best we can, when we should duly pay respects to and live our life in accordance with. Bundam Bhagavantan Apivadi Wakato Bhagavatna